Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 9th of June of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. As you can see, I have updated the map I'm using for the reports, and as you can see, I have added the fortification areas and fortification lines on the territory that are under Russian control. As you can see, there are a lot of fortifications. Probably you're familiar with these maps. I have found an open source map with the fortifications, and I have moved or copied all those fortifications to this map. So this will allow us to better understand the situation in the vicinity of Orekhov and in the vicinity of Vremivka tactical bridgehead. One more time, the Ukrainians during the previous days made a lot of attempts to penetrate the Russians' defense orders in direction of Bakhmut, in direction of Vremivka tactical bridgehead, but all their attacks were repelled by the Russian forces. The Minister of Defense of Russian Federation gave us today more fresh numbers of those attacks, and the Russians are saying that as a result of fierce fightings between Orekhov and Rabotina, the settlement, the Ukrainians lost 680 soldiers, 35 tanks, 11 fighting infantry machines, and 19 fighting armored machines, and one artillery system, Caesar. Furthermore, the Ukrainians during the day made a lot of attempts to attack the Russians. And mainly starting from the night, Ukrainians usually start their attacks at night. They were attacking in direction of the small settlement Nistirianka. That was one of the line of the direction of Ukrainian attacks. Another attacks took place between Novodanilovka and Rabotina. That was another attempt to attack. Few attacks the Ukrainians made in direction between these two, between Nistirianka and Rabotina. A lot of attacks took place between Rabotina and these settlements like Novopokrovka, and the Ukrainians made a lot of attacks deep inside of the Russian territories in direction of a small settlement Verbova. And based on the video and photo confirmations, we see that the main clashes between the Russian forces and the Ukrainian forces took place between these lines. I will add these lines to the map for better understanding. So as you can see, the Ukrainians during the previous days couldn't even capture or enter the first defense line of the Russian forces, so the first black dots on the map wasn't taken by the Ukrainians. So the most clashes took place between these two lines, the yellow line and the red line. And we know, and the Russians confirm this information, either the Ukrainians confirms that the Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours during the previous attempt couldn't establish even over a single black dot on this map. So imagine yourself, according to the numbers we have, the Ukrainians lost more than 100, around 200 units of armored vehicle, and they couldn't establish control over even a single black dot that located on the first line of defense. Imagine yourself that if Ukrainians had such a big level of losses in this area, imagine yourself what could happen with the Ukrainians if they, let's say, managed to get the line between Vasilievka and Tokmak, or if they were able to get as close as possible to Pologi. I'm not sure that if we calculate the number of armored vehicles, Russian and Ukrainian, and if we will transfer all these armored vehicles to Ukrainians, I'm not sure that this number of armored forces is enough for the Ukrainians to penetrate this one of the most powerful fortifications since the beginning of the humanity, or something like this. Furthermore, the Russians during the day published a lot of information, a lot of updates about the Ukrainians' attempts. For example, the Russians reported that somewhere in this area on the Orekhov front line, the forces of 47th Mechanized Brigade managed to capture some, let's say, hills or some forest lines, and the Russians attacked the positions of Ukrainians in that area using the flamethrower systems, and having heavy losses, the Ukrainians were forced to step back. Furthermore, some Russian sources reported that Ukrainians, using significant number of armored vehicles, started heading in direction of Rabotina. The Russians are saying that Ukrainians sent around 30 armored vehicles to attack Russian positions, but most of those forces were destroyed by the Russian artillery fire, by the Russian missile fire. Currently on this video you see the work work of Russian artillery. There are like forest lines, very difficult to see the Ukrainian armored vehicles, but wait a little bit and you're gonna see the first explosions in this area. Currently we see how the Russians attacking this area using the carpet bombing. You see that, I believe, and now you see the first explosion. Probably Bradley or another Leopard was destroyed as a result of that attack. So this is like the intro of the main part of the video, and in a few seconds we're going to see the first results of those artillery bombing, shelling from the Russian side. And on this video you see the first Bradleys that were destroyed or during this Ukrainian counteroffensive. Right exactly in the middle of this screen you can see the Leopard tank, and this Leopard tank is encircled with 4 Bradleys. So as you can see, the Ukrainians lost a lot of armored vehicles, and probably, as you can see, they were attacking during the daylight time. Probably the Western countries are unhappy with these photo and video confirmations, and probably this is exactly the reason why the United States of America took a decision not to support and not to send the Abrams tanks to the territory of Ukraine, to the Ukraine, because I believe nobody wanted to see the video and photo confirmations of destroyed Abrams on the battlefield of Ukraine. Later, the Russian sources made calculations, and as a result of all those attacks, the Ukrainians lost 5 Leopards, 6 Bradleys, 3 Max Pro, 1 UPR T-72 of Czech production, 1 demining machine, and 1 French armored vehicles VAB. So as you can see, a lot of this, another Leopard 2A6. For example, on this photo we can see Max Pro and Leopard 2A6 as well. On this photo we can see Max Pro and 2 M2A2 Bradleys. Further, if we go further, we're gonna see another Bradley in this area, and on this photo we can see the Netherlands UPR 765. On this video we can see 2 Leopards that were destroyed as a result of artillery attack. When going further, we see 1 Czech T-72 M1, and now on this video photo we can see the French VAB, and also we can see another Leopard 2A4. So I believe that disaster for the Ukrainians has ended. I'm not sure, and I don't think that Ukrainians are going to launch another wave of counteroffensive operation, and not because of the fact that they don't want to do this. Probably the Western countries and the Western plants that produce this weapon don't want to see the photos of destroyed Leopards. Probably the stocks of this company has already gone down. So this is not exactly what the Western countries want to see. Furthermore, the Russians reported that the Ukrainians made a few attempts to attack in direction of this salient, in direction of Verbovka, but that attempt, that wave of attack was also stopped by the Russian artillery fire, and as a result of targeted attack, the Ukrainians lost another armored vehicles with a very heavy explosion. It's very difficult to understand what exactly was destroyed, but as you can see, the explosions was very heavy. So the Ukrainians were trying to attack, and the most clashes took place not even on the territory that between trenches or fortifications. The Ukrainians couldn't even pass the first line of defense, and they lost, even based on the Ukrainian sources, more than 150 armored vehicles, including tanks and armored vehicles like Bradleys and so on. We haven't seen strikers, by the way, but anyway. Furthermore, the Russians reported that during the day they made a very massive support of their helicopters. They were flying all the time from north to the south, from south to the north, attacking the Ukrainians' convoys and so on. And the Russians published another video of attack against the Ukrainian convoy. As you can see, a very long convoy were heading to the combat line, and now you see the launch of missile by the Ka-57 Alligator helicopter, and as a result of that attack, as you can see, another Bradley was destroyed, and now we're gonna see the explosion. This is the explosion. So that was a terrible day of the Ukrainians, and I'm not even sure what exactly they're planning to do, how to reduce the negative voice from this situation. Also, the Russians reported that they attacked the Ukrainians in the settlements like Preobrazhenka, Amelnik, and Gulay-Polye, and they were attacking the Ukrainians' reserves that probably they were planning to send for another suicide and massive meat grinder operation. But I believe that probably the Russians managed to prevent this situation. Furthermore, the Ministry of Defense reported that during the air battle, the Ukrainians lost another MiG-29 in the vicinity of Nova Zaporozhye, and the Ukrainians lost another Su-25 in the vicinity of small settlement by the name of Babina. So probably the Ukrainians were trying to at least somehow to help and support their forces in this area, but as we see, the Ukrainians are losing their aircrafts almost every single day, and it's another terrible and another disaster for the Ukrainians. And now, based on this map of the Ukrainian movements, or the photo and video confirmations of the Ukrainian movements and destroyed vehicles, based on the trenches, we understand the real plans of the Ukrainians, or at least what exactly did they want to achieve as a result of all these attacks. If you take a look at this fortification map, you're gonna see that we can split these territory at least in three parts. The western part we're going to call Vasilievka Tokamak fortification area, and basically I'm talking about this fortification area that located on the west of the screen. Currently you are looking at the second fortification area we can call like Palogi fortification area. This is another area, and if you take a look at these two areas, you're gonna see that there is one common thing between these two areas, and that there are a lot of concentrated black points in the vicinity of these settlements. And currently there is another area. I will not add any cloud, any like polygon. I'm talking about the area between these two fortification areas. Let's call it like this one. We're looking like right in front of this. You can see this area right in front of your screens, and basically the Ukrainians make the most logical decision from their side is to attack exactly in the area where they can see and where they managed to found the last number of fortifications. So basically the Ukrainians were trying to attack in this direction. They were trying to penetrate these defense orders, to capture all these fortifications, and to split this territory in two parts. But as we can see, as a result of fierce fightings for the first days, we see that Ukrainians were completely defeated. They lost a significant number of armored vehicles, and currently they don't even know what to do next and how to solve this issue, because we know that on the 20th of June there are going to be a NATO meeting where the NATO countries were planning to make a decision about further support of Ukraine, and probably they were expecting a very beautiful pictures how the NATO Leopards and Strikers and Bradleys were penetrating the Russians' defense orders, capturing more and more territories. But currently we see completely opposite picture. And I believe that it will reduce some kind of positive attitude from the Western countries in the question of support of Ukrainian forces. Now let's talk a little bit about the Lobkova bridgehead. The Ukrainians also made, if you remember, we discussed that Ukrainians captured that settlement, but later the Russians launched a counteroffensive and the Ukrainians were forced to step back. But currently the Russian sources are saying that this settlement is in the gray zone. But the specific of this area is that the Russians were attacking and mainly were fighting with the Ukrainians using the kamikaze drones. And currently the Russians published another video when they were using the kamikaze drone, and as a result of that attack, probably another Bradley was destroyed. So another significant tragedy for the Ukrainians. Now let's move further, and now we're going to talk a little bit about Vremivka tactical bridgehead. The Russians are saying that Ukrainians also made few attempts to attack in direction of Livadna. That attack was repelled by the Russians. Furthermore, the Ukrainians continue attacking, trying to capture the bridgehead on the west from Starozhova and Niskuchina, and probably they managed to capture this hill, or this hill is in the gray zone. When talking about the area of responsibilities of 37th Marine Brigade, we haven't received any updates about their activity on this front line. Now we are moving further to to Donetsk front line, and we are going to talk about Mariinka and about Opytne, Avdiivka, and Pervomayskaya Vodyane. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported Ukrainians made at least 6 waves of attacks in direction of all those settlements, and as a result of those attacks, the Ukrainians lost 410 soldiers, 19 armored vehicles, including 3 tanks and 2 artillery systems. Mainly the Ukrainians were trying to attack the Russians from the north of Mariinka, trying to push them back, at least from this side of this bridgehead, but that attack was repelled and the forces of 79th Air Assault Brigade were forced to step back. Furthermore, the Russians took a decision to destroy the ammo depot in Krasnogorovka of the same 79th Air Assault Brigade. Furthermore, the Ukrainians from the bridgehead between Tonenka and Severne were trying to attack the Russians in direction of Pervomayskaya. The Ukrainians were trying to attack in direction of Vodyane, and the Ukrainians were trying to attack the Russians in direction of Opytne. All those attacks were repelled by the Russians, and currently it's unknown whether the Ukrainians were able to capture some bridgehead or the Russians managed to restore their positions in this area. Furthermore, few attempts the Ukrainians made to attack Krasnogorovka, probably from Keramik, but that attack was repelled by the Russians as well. Now we're going to Bakhmut and to Artyomovsk. We haven't received any updates from this area. Probably there is like a clashes, but just along the positions without any active storming operations from both sides. During the previous days, the Ukrainians managed to develop a little bit their bridgehead in the vicinity of Yagidne and Berkhovka using the forces of 77th Air Mobile and 57th Motorized Brigade, and on the south the Ukrainians managed to develop their bridgehead along the channel using the forces of 3rd Assault Brigade Azov, 5th Assault Brigade and 24th Mechanized Brigade that currently located in Dzержinsk. Furthermore, the Russians reported that as a result of artillery attack they destroyed at least 2 headquarters of that 24th Mechanized Brigade in that area. When talking about Seversk, Liman and Kupiansk front line, there are no changes on this area. Probably there are very heavy clashes, but all over the combat line without any movements to the west or to the east or to the north, and the total losses of the Ukrainians on those front lines were around 80 soldiers, 6 armored vehicles and 3 artillery systems without any changes on the ground. As you can see, the situation in this area is stable. The Ukrainians reduced their activity in Belgorod, and we remember the words of Prigozhin, who promised us that within the next few weeks he is going to start his clearing operation on the north of Belgorod area. Furthermore, the Russians made massive missile attack during the previous night, trying to attack and destroy the Ukrainians' ammo depots, and as a result of one of those attacks, the Russians managed to destroy the ammo depot in Uman, and as you can see, the explosion was very heavy. Probably the Russians managed to get a very powerful, a very big ammo depot that the Ukrainians were using to supply and support their forces on the Zaporozhye area. As an act of response, the act of revenge, the Ukrainians made another attack in the area of Crimea, and they using the 3 Storm Shadows missiles. One of that missile was shut down by the Russian air defense systems, and system 2 of those missiles managed to get the target, and they destroyed or attacked some kind of like children camp that people and families send their kids during the summer period of time or something like this. So that probably we don't need to judge, we need more information. Maybe the Ukrainians thought that they were positions of Russian forces, who knows, but anyway, this is not a very good thing that happened during the previous day. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.